Hello, everyone. We're about to get started. We've still got about 1 minute, so I'll just give it that minute to wait for other people to show up if they want to. And so yes, soon we will begin. Well, it's 2 o'clock now, actually, so I will get started. So let's just begin. Come on. Today I'm going to be talking to you about creating an ORCID. And I am Maureen Babb, one of the librarians at the WRHA Virtual Library. I will be talking to you today about this. This is one of our many webinars that we offer. And this is the last one of the summer session. We'll be announcing the next batch of them later today. So in terms of what I'm going to cover today, I'm going to briefly describe what the WRHA Virtual Library is and what its services are. I'm going to briefly describe what an ORCID is. I'm going to describe what an ORCID is. I'm going to explain the benefits of having an ORCID. I'm going to demonstrate the process of setting up an ORCID. And then finally, I'm going to talk about how the WRHA Virtual Library can help you with your ORCID. So who we are. We're the WRHA Virtual Library, and we provide access to electronic resources and library services for WRHA staff, eligible community health agencies, and eligible personal care homes. You can check out whether your CHA or PCH is one of the eligible ones by going to our main page and looking at the Get Access section. The virtual library has a number of electronic resources, Medline, CINAHL, things like that. And we do library services. We provide literature searches. We provide document delivery for anything we don't have direct access to. Right now, we are not providing physical items, but usually we do until everybody's sort of recovered from this COVID crisis. We unfortunately don't have the physical items there for you. And we provide education and training sessions like this one. And as you can see, or as you will see later in this education session, we offer a few other services that aren't these main ones. And you can check that out on our website under the services section. So what is an ORCID? Well, I mean, like we've heard of orchids, and well, maybe it's not an ORCID, maybe it's an ORCID ID, you know, for an RPG. Well, unsurprisingly, it's not either of those things, and it is in fact an open researcher and contributor ID. So what is that exactly? So it's a unique identifier for researchers and scholars like you. And so it's an ID for you, and it is a persistent digital identifier. So that means that it'll stick around, that it won't change as websites are updated or anything like that. It links to your work. It shows off, it's sort of like an online CV, sort of, and it distinguishes you from other researchers. And it's ORCIDs are open, so they're open access, they're non-proprietary, which means that they can communicate with other platforms like Scopus, like some others that we'll be going through. But that it also, some of the other platforms that on the surface look similar, academia.edu or ResearchGate, these are things that are in fact proprietary software. And they're run by corporations. ORCIDs are designed to be open. They're designed to be accessible across many different platforms. They're not trying to convince you to join up so that they can earn money in some way. It's transparent. You can see how it works and what it does. It's mobile. It's not bound to a specific institution, a specific publisher, or a specific database. So your ORCID travels with you, and for you, it's free. So that's what they are. So what does it look like? When you go to the main page of ORCID, which the website there you can see at the top, https://orchid.org/. So you can see this is what the website looks like, and we'll go through it more in general. But so I talked about it listing your work. So in terms of what it covers, it includes your employment, So your employment history, and typically you want to keep this to your professional employment history. You're not wanting to include that time you spent as a barista 10 years ago. You want to include your education and qualifications, invited positions and distinctions. So things like an honorary degree would go in there, or awards that you've won would also go in there. It includes your memberships and your service. So if you're a member of any professional organization, you'll want to list that there, and your service. So the things that you've done to help out your discipline and that sort of thing. Again, this is related to your discipline. You're typically not wanting to include the volunteer experience that you did as a kid, which I'm sure you know. And then you can include your funding as well as your work. So your publications, your presentations, things like that. So this, as I say, it's sort of like an online CV. It's all in one place. It's for people to see. So aside from listing all this stuff, I mean, every one of you has a CV or a resume or something like that. We've all had to create them. So what's so great about this? Well, there are a couple of things. One, it's online, so people can see it. Second, there's name disambiguation, right? So like I have Maureen Babb is a fairly unique name. If you look me up in any of the scholarly databases and you find results for this specific name, it's probably me. But somebody with the name like John Smith, that's not going to be true. So if you have an ORCID, you can correlate or collect all that stuff together and say, hey, this John Smith, this one who went to this university and has these publications, well, that's me. And you can see all of this here. And this other John Smith, who's written this poor quality scholarship that I don't want to be associated with, well, that's not me. And so it also increases your discoverability in terms of, you know, it's another major scholarly hub online so that people can find it and look at it. But it also is discoverability in the sense that if somebody reads one of your papers and they're like, wow, that was really good, I want to find those other papers by this person, particularly if one of your names is not, or is fairly common, then this adds to the discoverability of your work because they can go to your ORCID and see the stuff there. So there are those benefits. There's also some other benefits that for anyone who's writing grants or wanting to keep up an online presence without having to constantly be maintaining it, ORCID IDs are beneficial in that way. They can speed up the grant writing process. Now, ORCID is currently integrated with several publishers, funders, and institutions. It's not currently integrated with the Canadian Commons CV, but there are plans to integrate it with the Canadian Commons CV in the future. If any of you have had the misfortune of using the Canadian Commons CV, you will know that it is the absolute worst thing. It's cumbersome and it's annoying and it's not very user-friendly, and at least when I last used it, it crashed all the time. And so if you have an ORCID ready to go, once they integrate, you'll be able to just link the Canadian Commons CV to your ORCID and it'll auto-populate the information. And that's, you know, in the future. So it's worth having one ready to go for when this becomes an issue or for when this becomes a thing. ORCID is currently working with a number of different funders to provide integration. There are funders that it's already associated with. Most of them are not Canadian funders at this point, but it looks like it's going that way. So I would recommend just having one. And so there's also stuff. It links up with various publishers, Elsevier, IEEE, Sage, Taylor & Francis, Wiley, Scopus. So those ones, if you want to, if you've published something and it appears in, say, an Elsevier journal, or something that appears in Scopus, if you've linked your ORCID to, say, your Scopus or to your publication or to your account in Elsevier, then when that publication comes out, it will automatically be ported into your ORCID. So you don't have to do all that extra work of adding it manually. And there are different individual journals will have different setups on this. Some open journals have this. I've certainly published in open journals that have had, you can set your ORCID in there and then it'll automatically show up in there. So that's really something that's beneficial and quite a time saver, because you're not constantly having to update all this information. So in terms of setting one up, it's fairly easy. It's fairly straightforward. As ever, when you set up anything, the majority of work is at the beginning, right? Because you have to put in your information and you have to, if you have other, say, Google Scholar ID or Scopus or whatever, you need to put those in right away. But once you've got the bones of it, then you can sort of maintain it in a way that involves very little effort from you. And when you're setting it up, you can include as much or as little information as you like. If you commit to, like, you're not, by signing up for one, you're not committing to including all your, say, 40 years as a researcher's worth of publications. You can just say, okay, well, I'm going to include like the last 3 publications that I did, or even no publications. I just want people to know that I'm the scholar with this name that went to this university that works in this field. You can also set the privacy of your profile. So I've talked about, adding to discoverability and being visible on the internet as a benefit. But for whatever reason, you may decide that you don't want it to be visible. You just want it there for the handy aspect of linking to, of helping you with grant applications or of correlating, your work with the publishers that are integrated with ORCID. So you can set it so at a couple of different privacy ratings. I'll show you what they are later on in this presentation. And as I said, you can link it to other accounts, your Google Scholar account, your Scopus account, that sort of thing. So we're back to the main page of ORCID. This is what it looks like. Registering is pretty simple. So if we scroll down on this page, you'd see this 1, 2, 3 sort of bar and register. Well, that's where you'd go to register. Register now, right here. And so when you start registering, you'll be taken to a screen that looks like this. So as you can see, the basic stuff that you need to sign up, it's very straightforward. So you've got your first name, your last name, your primary email, which I would recommend you set as your institutional email, and your additional email. So I would also include an additional email that's not linked to one of your institutions, just in case for whatever reason you're not able to use your institutional email. Say you change jobs or something like that, and you no longer have access to it, right? So you want to make sure you have that backup email that's not affiliated with anything. And this is particularly true for people who are in, term positions and that sort of thing. Then of course there's the password setup. And if you scroll down further, here's where you'll see the visibility settings. So you can see that you can set your ORCID to be visible by everybody. That's what I chose for mine. Or you can select only trusted parties to see it, or you can say like only me, only I get to see it, and that's it. And then you can also, sign up for a newsletter about ORCID stuff, and then you have to agree to the terms of use. So because I'd created my ORCID long before I started preparing for this education session today, I can't take you through the process directly of setting up what an ORCID looks like. But once you've signed up for the ORCID and you've got it ready to go, what you'll have is a page that looks sort of like this. So you can see this is my ORCID, my ORCID ID. And you can see here in the middle that there's all these different sections that I mentioned: employment, education and qualifications, invited positions and distinctions, memberships and service, funding, and works. And I've just collapsed most of them because I just wanted you to see all of them in the screen. You can have a fairly long list of stuff and you wouldn't be able to see all of it, but when you open them up, they all look roughly the same as this. And so that's how you collapse or uncollapse them, with those little arrows. And so when you are ready to start populating the information here, now you can do it manually. You don't have to link it up with, your Scopus account or whatever, though you certainly can. And you see at So for instance, I've got my University of Alberta education here, and then there's this little star at the bottom, preferred source. And over to the left at the very bottom of the University of Alberta section, there's the source listed as Maureen Babb, which means that I have entered that manually. There are a couple of my works on here that they come up and they show two different sources, and they show the preferred source, the ones that I entered manually, but there's also another version of the source where it's imported it from Scopus. And so you can choose which one you want to be the preferred source if you want, or you can just not bother entering things manually and leave it for it to be auto-populated, which can certainly save time. So adding a qualification, there's a little section over here in the top right of each one of these sections. So right now I've got education and qualifications pulled up, so you can see add qualification, add education. And for each one of these sections, there are relevant, or there are different sort of add whatever, right? So employment is add employment, and works, you've got add, and then you have all these different types of things you can add. You know, you can add a conference presentation, you can add a conference abstract, you can add a book chapter, you can add an article, all that sort of thing. So as you go through, you'll see what the different sections ask for, and each one of them has specialized information. It's set up to be easy and straightforward, and for my part, I have found it very easy and straightforward. Sometimes when things are set up to be easy and straightforward, they're just kind of crappy and there's too much or not enough information, or they try and shoehorn you in. I haven't found that with ORCID. I've found it fairly easy to use, and they often have explanations. So you can see by education and qualifications, it's got a little question mark right there, the blue circle with the question mark in it. And if you click on those and open them up, it'll show you like what's expected in this section. What are you allowed to put in here? What should you consider putting in here? And that sort of thing. So that's worth it too. You can also see there's an also known as section. So in my case, sometimes I use my middle name and sometimes I don't, right? So I've got also known as Maureen Nicole Babb, Maureen N. Babb. If you had a maiden name or something like that, you would want to include that. If you've transitioned and had a different name, but you still want to link to your previous scholarship, you can include that too. So that's great because, again, it's correlating all your stuff, even if you've changed names over the course of your academic or health, over the course of your publishing career in scholarship, right? So there's other stuff that you can include. As I mentioned, you can import other IDs. I've included my Scopus author ID in there as well. There's other stuff in this toolbar on the left. So for instance, you can display your ID on other sites. If you click on that, it'll give you a bit of code that you can just embed into your website. There's a public record and print view. So what we're seeing here is the view that you, with your own content, see. The view that the public sees is similar, but not the same. Obviously, they can't add stuff or change the privacy or anything like that. There's also a print view, which is just a very straightforward list. You could potentially, if you've set this up well enough, you could use it as your CV and just print that out, or send it off as a PDF or whatever when you apply for a job. So that's great. And you can also get a QR code for your ID if you want. Now, I talked about changing the privacy of your whole account before, but you can also change the privacy of individual items. So you can see here, I've got the little green bunch of people there. So that means that that's visible to everybody. Everybody can see that I went to the University of Alberta, but I could change it to the trusted parties or to only me if for whatever reason I don't want other people to see that particular bit of information. So that's sort of what it's like and how you add information to it. There's also a bit at the top there. You can see there's a space for a biography, which I haven't opted to fill out. But if you're somebody who, for whatever reason, you can just have a biography because you want one, but particularly if you're somebody who maybe there's news snippets about you or something, it might be worthwhile to just have that biography that people could use if they were, I don't know, doing a press release about you or something fun like that. So in terms of what the virtual library can help you with, well, we can do education sessions like this one for you or your group. We can also work with you individually to set up your ORCID to, work through the process with you if you'd like, if you're finding that this webinar was not quite as helpful as you would have liked. And to do that, you can book a one-on-one appointment with a librarian. To do that, you can go to the contact page and email any of us directly, or there is a book an appointment with a librarian button. Right now, all our appointments will be either online or over the phone, but feel free to do that. There's also a bit more information about this service and a few other smaller services that we offer related to research and data management at the website that I've listed there. So that is all, and I'm a little bit ahead of schedule. I'll stay on for questions I'll just see if anybody has any, and if they do, then I will answer them, and if not, then I will head on out. So, yes. Yeah, maybe while I'm waiting to see if anybody has any questions, I'll just talk about some of the things that ORCID isn't. So this isn't a repository. It isn't a place where you upload any files. It's just a place where you list the information and link to, say, the DOI or the handle or any of those, or even the URL of your work. So you're not, it's not trying to get PDFs. You're not going to run into any problems with copyright. Like there was a major thing with ResearchGate where people were uploading works, so even though they're their works, they didn't actually have permission to upload them, and it was a whole thing. So yeah, this is just a list, but it allows you to be linked up to these publishers, to these funders, to these organizing bodies, to these institutions, and it's a way for people to identify you and your research specifically, and in a way where you don't have to manually go through every single time and upload things. So once you've got it set up and once you've got it linked to, say, your Scopus account, you don't have to manually add every single one of your articles that appears in Scopus. As soon as it appears in Scopus, it will, well, maybe not as soon as, but shortly after it appears in Scopus, if it's linked to your author ID there, then that will import into ORCID just for you. So you don't need to worry about keeping this up to date yourself all the time. So I am not seeing any questions. So I'm going to head on out. I hope this was beneficial to you. Have a great day. Now, where is the stop button? All right, bye everyone.